Every time you exhale, you breathe some carbon dioxide, some CO2 into the AIR. And your breath is like a tiny version of the widespread carbon emissions causing climate change. Increases of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere is leading to increases in average temperatures around the world.
All life is carbon-based, and the carbon for all that life originates from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
This means that human activity contributes less than 5% to the total annual carbon emissions. Tiny, right? Insignificant, right? Well, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, human activity has produced about 1.5 trillion tons of CO2, and our emissions have only increased year on year, accelerating alarmingly quickly in recent decades.
CO2 emissions from fossil fuels, which constitute 85% of our energy use, must be reduced to zero by 2100. If we don't save ourselves from ourselves, we're toast.
Alstom specializes in two CO2 capture technologies for power plants: post-combustion, which involves capturing the CO2 after combustion, and oxy-fuel combustion, which produces concentrated CO2 resulting from combustion in nitrogen-free air. In both cases, the idea is to isolate CO2 to avoid its release into the atmosphere.
So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna breathe like really hard inside of the mask, and I'm gonna cover these areas as well. Just kind of simulate very extorted activities and see what's gonna happen.
Yep, and that is not a good end-tidal CO2. No, we don't want it down in the 20s.
So these numbers are definitely not good. Look at that.
Good.
And I'm actually feeling a little bit dizzy right now. So as you can see, now when you try to wear your mask, and if it's too hot, and that's what happens with your oxygen levels.
The idea is to isolate CO2 to avoid its release into the atmosphere. CO2 capture and storage could eliminate up to 1/5 of the CO2 coming from power generation. With its technologies, Alstom is offering solutions that ramp up the fight against global warming. It's a long struggle that has only just begun.
But while COP26 will not be the end of climate change, it can and it must mark the beginning of the end.